Dust2 on Counter-Strike Global Offensive. Tonight on relivetv, I'm joined by Jacob Farrell and Mike Matthias. I'm Matthew Little. How are you guys doing tonight?
I'm doing just fine.
Rather pleasurable. I don't know what that means.
Yes.
Hello.
Alright, so I think the first and most obvious change to Dust 2 here would be just actually the way it looks itself. It's not so dusty as one would remember. It's now like a more city type setting with pavement and roads, and you see some cars on fire over there. That's kind of cool. But other than that, it does not. I mean, obviously the map layout is the exact same, but like looking at things, you wouldn't think that this was Dust.
Yeah, they've tried to tie everything together a little more thematically. It looks like we're in the Middle East, and which I think is no surprise to anyone. And you are, in fact, able to play with bots now. I'm not sure if that was the case when the beta first went live on this map. But,
too sure.
I don't know, my take on it is like it's better than the source Dust 2 in my opinion. It seems like you said, it's more like thematic, like it's all sort of cohesive. But I don't know, I'm like that angry classic gamer. I still love my 1.6 with the nice crisp angles and none of these weird like props where you have to like look into little cracks and strange stuff. But hey, it looks good from a graphics perspective.
It's the wave of the future.
And I think that'll always be the case too, that people will look back on the glory days of 1.6, and I don't think there's anything that can really bring that back. Even if Global Offensive becomes massive, I think people always think about when, pro gamers didn't really make money, and they're living in their mother's basement with fondness for some reason. I don't know why, but
just playing it for the love of the game itself there.
It looks like the Dust effect that you were talking about last week, Jacob, where it's almost like a smoke is off throughout the whole map if you go to far enough distances, and it looks like really that is more of an engine-related thing as opposed to something that's part of the map. Because I think we can observe that here, or do you disagree?
It doesn't seem as bad here on Dust 2. On Dust 1 it's a lot more prevalent, but that's a pretty good example right here. That's not too bad. Not nearly as bad as the other day on Dust when there was a guy literally inches from me and you could hardly see him at all until he shot at me.
That's what I'm talking about though, like things like that. Like it might seem like a little thing to like the the mainstream consumer or like the average person, but I don't know, it affects gameplay and like more than you think, and it's just kind of, I don't know. I mean, it looks good, and it sells to like sponsors and whatever, and makes it look good, but I don't know. I don't agree with it from a gameplay perspective.
Yeah, it definitely could be a little bad, especially in those real clutch situations where maybe you could overlook something really easily if you don't if you aren't quick enough to notice just like a small little movement. Now you add a factor like that where like the movement could be concealed just because they pop out in the right place at the wrong time for you, and you just can't really see them that well. But I mean, who knows? Maybe those occurrences could be few and far between.
Jacob was talking about the possibility of kicking up dust just by shooting the ground, and if it's done en masse, then it would be just as effective as a smoke. But of course, it would give your position away a little more. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see what kind of mechanics find their way into the game at release, and what is just something that's here for the beta.
Didn't they say earlier too that the fog or the dust, like we're just talking about, I remember they said something about when you would spawn, it would be more prevalent where you spawn, and then once you get into sort of the middle of the level or in a firefight, it would dissipate. I don't know if that's still if they're still implementing that, but
Yeah,
It's an odd implementation. So we've seen so far the two different diffuse types, because one round Jacob spawned with a diffuser and the next round he didn't. So what do you guys think of this random aspect of who gets the diffuse kit at the beginning of the round? And I believe there's 2 people who get them.
Right,
per
there
team.
are,
Well,
there's 2
on
kits.
counter-terrorist, I mean.
I think it's definitely going to affect play, because now those 2 kits, it's not so much more like in 1.6 or even Source, where you can just have a strat where someone plays a certain site. Now if someone spawns with that kit, one of those kits has to be A, and one of those kits has to be B, kind of deal. At least it would be, they don't have to be, but it would be, a little bit better.
That's
so they are
actually
still given out randomly then.
Yeah.
It looks like it. And you know what is interesting about that is we were talking earlier about how we liked the random spawning nature in 1.6, where you could play positions off of spawns, and how
Right.
the spawns are always the same in Go. But there is still a random aspect, because if one person spawns with a diffuser, maybe you want to change up the strat. Like you were saying, you want one at each site. So who knows? I mean, maybe we will still be playing by spawns based off of who has diffuse kits.
Yeah, and
Yeah,
I mean,
so as far as teamwork goes, I think that's a good idea. I mean, I think it's a good change as far as teamwork goes, and it kind of complements teamwork, because that way, everyone learns each spot, and it's kind of, it's not just you relying on one person that's really good in one spot and maybe not so good in another spot.
yeah, it would definitely force people to be a lot bigger of team players, because let's say someone normally plays A, and they spawn with the kit, and you want them to be mid for a quick rotate or something, for whether it gets planted A or B, that person then is gonna have to play mid. They could not be used to it, or they could be, but either way, over time, because of that factor, it'll pretty much force them to have to be good at every spot.
Yeah, definitely.
Here we're noticing the lighting effects a little bit. It looks like characters don't just sort of turn jet black when they're in the underpass, like CT spawn, just these sort of dark areas. And that wasn't necessarily a problem in 1.6, because you could really heavily adjust your config and kind of get rid of that.
Yeah.
But I mean, now for new players coming into the game who maybe don't have experience working with their config or have somebody to set it up for them, I think it was a huge disadvantage for them that they didn't even necessarily know about, and maybe that's why you sort of don't evolve your play then, because you think you can just sit in a corner and people won't be able to see you.
That was it. Nice one, sir.
Yeah. I definitely agree with that. It could.
Bomb has been defused.
Sorry, I'm kind of.
It'll help out the new players, but as far as on a competitive level, it may not make any difference whatsoever.
Right. Yeah.
But I think I like it, and I mean the lighting effects. Like you can see when you're spawning, it's sort of things are a little bit dull, and then when the action's about to start, things lighten up, and it just gives you a sense of the round starting a little bit. It's kind of a dramatic effect. We
Yeah,
saw
you kinda pop into it.
and we saw on Dust how they basically did something equally as dramatic for the counter-terrorists, where you're getting dropped off by a helicopter. And I think those are little things, because really you're still just spawning. There's nothing's changed, but they give you sort of something interesting to think about when you're doing. It gets you in the mood anyway.
Right.
A little bit better than we've seen before. I think it's a small detail that a lot of thought was put into, and I like that. Hopefully we see a lot more of those kind of aspects to the game.
Yeah, they definitely. I think they could, be a little innovative without risking too much gameplay. But then there's also, always the possibility that they get, a little bit too innovative and they start, ruining things. But some people think, Steam is Valve, and Valve has been questionable over the years, like recently, with their game choices and how they've been treating their games. But you know, I think they just might, you know, they just might pull through here with CS:GO. It has all the potential, all in the right places.
Yeah, and they've got the help of
That was it.
another
You, sir.
software developer as well. It's not just Valve working on it.
You'll get
Right,
it.
right.
It's been diffused.
So, Jake, what about how would you describe the recoil? I know we talked about this with Dewey a little bit, but from your perspective, how would you describe the recoil compared to like 1.6 in Source?
Compared to 1.6 in Source, yeah, it definitely feels a bit more Source-ish. Although they did do a good job with making the bullets not random like Source. They do actually follow a pattern here. Like I can just kind of empty 2 clips at this wall without moving the mouse at all. And then I can do the same one again, just right next to it.
See, that's I like that.
They follow the same pattern, you know, pretty much.
Yeah, that's definitely they definitely actively tried to make that reminiscent of 1.6 for sure. So I like that.
But Jacob was saying last week that even though they've tried to take the randomness out of it, either the recoil patterns need to be learned,
Right.
and they just haven't been learned yet, or it is just sort of innately random. Like he feels that the pattern is there on paper. Like you see that there's supposed to be a pattern, but the bullet trajectories don't necessarily follow that pattern. Like where the bullet is going, or to hit the opposing team's hitboxes or whatever, isn't necessarily where the decals that are appearing on the wall would.
Yeah, once you're shooting at another player there, it definitely feels a little bit different. The one click or the single click is really powerful in this game, more so than the burst. The burst is okay, but the single click is really just...
Yeah, I feel like it might even be a bit too strong. I mean,
yeah,
it's just like my opinion, but it looks like, for example, like in 1.6, when you used one click, it would feel like, you know, maybe your first 2 or 3 would be like perfect or so, and then you get like one sort of random shot that would fire, or like if you'd move a tiny bit, it would be like, you know, inaccurate instantly. Whereas this game seems like if you're moving, it's just, you know, it's still pretty accurate.
Yeah. Another one of the big things is I don't really know what else to really call it. I know this isn't really the best explanation of it. But you know that feeling you get when you're spraying in like some pretty heavy lag, like when you're spraying with like 100 ping plus. You know, like your gun is all moving about, and you know your recoil is all going over the place, but you can't really control it. Like it feels like you don't have much control over it, no matter what you do.
Yeah.
I mean, I am playing on stream, but even when I've played without it, I get kind of the same feeling. Like I feel like I am moving, you know, and changing and things like that, but it's all like delayed. Like I'll start trying to move my recoil down, and it won't start like really moving me down until like, you know, like a half of a second, but enough to be, you know, noticeable.
It's kind of like the crouching, man. I can hardly get over that. I just love feeling that, you know, as soon as you hit a button, what you're doing is going to be represented instantly on your avatar or on the screen or whatever, and when you hit crouch, it's like a noticeable delay.
I almost think they did it so that you couldn't abuse the little hop you got when you would crouch, you know, like a bunch like that, and you know how you could kind of see over boxes and things like that, which I think is a great competitive aspect. But I think from the way this has turned out, I think that's kind of them saying they really didn't like that about. I think they maybe didn't want it to turn out like that, but I mean, the last update they got, you know, was 2001 or something like that, so it was too far gone to, you know, change.
Yeah, I don't like that they didn't embrace that, to be honest, though. I like these games where, you know, they're maybe like sort of unknown games, like for instance, just throwing this out there, but guns. It would be like you could exploit the game to a point where it would be like so fun, but it was never like none of that was ever intended, and like, you know, CS with the crouch hopping and all this kind of stuff was never intended, but it made for like really interesting gameplay at points. And
right, which
I
think is a very important part of, you know, like gameplay. But sorry to cut you off there. Sometimes the little things like that can, you know,